This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
Given all the quarterbacking injuries we had throughout this year in the NFL, I think we got pretty lucky with the way things broke for the playoffs because all three NFC playoff games in wildcard weekend are bangers. We got some pretty fun AFC games too, and I think based on the initial odds, some spots where there is some value across this week at FanDuel Sportsbook. What we're going to do for today is I'm going to dig into all 6 games across wildcard weekend, outline what my models say, both of the spread and total, and outline where I see value at FanDuel Sportsbook and whether or not I agree enough with the model to trust and actually bet that based on where the market currently is. So let's dive on in and go through all 6 games for the wild card round. Welcome on into Covering the Spread. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and FanDuel Research. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a managing editor of digital media for FanDuel Research, here to give my first look at the wild card weekend games at FanDuel Sportsbook and outline where my models show value for this week. Again, just going game by game to outline my favorite bets for the wild card round. The schedule for this week will be pretty similar to usual. Tomorrow, Ryan Williams will be with us, talk some futures, heading into the playoffs, outlining where he sees value in the futures market of FanDuel Sportsbook. Ryan had a pretty good year, being on the Bucks to win the NFC South, Texans to win the AFC South. Good year all around by Ryan, so looking forward to that discussion with him. Talk some NBA, NHL with Tom Vecchio on Wednesday. Dr. Ed Feng is with us on Thursday to break down his read on the wildcard games, and then player props with JJ Zachariason coming up on Friday, all right here in the Covering the Spread podcast feed. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or over on Spotify. Also, a reminder that our preview of the national championship game between Michigan and Washington is already up on the Covering the Spread podcast feed, the FanDuel YouTube page, and FanDuel TV Plus. Just go there to get Dr. Ed Feng's insights on that game and a player prop he likes for tonight as well. The NFL playoffs are here, and now is the time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Kentucky, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342 in Arizona. 1-888-789-7777. Or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. 1-800-522-4700. Visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas. 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia. 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text OPEN-Y in New York. Let's dig in now and talk about these wild card games over at FanDuel Sportsbook and outline where I'm seeing value for this weekend. Again, just going game by game for this week. Let's begin things with the Saturday afternoon game. That is the Browns at the Texans. We're right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. The Browns are 2.5-point favorites, and the total in this game is 43.5. And this Browns team has been efficient, or at least more efficient with Joe Flacco than they have been this entire year. If you look at the games with just Flacco, they're a .05 passing net expected points per dropback. NEP is numberFire's EPA metric, and the league average is .07. So again, Flacco, .05, a bit below average, but it's way better than where they were at before. And when you pair it with their defense, it's a very good recipe. So It's a good team, the Browns are. And I think this defense is very good. The Texans are also a bit more run heavy than you would like. They have a 51.6% early down pass rate in games Stroud has started and finished. So they should be leaning more into the pass than what they've done, but I don't think that will change. So it's a more efficient Browns offense. It is a very good Browns defense, and it's also a Texans offense that may not be operating the way you would like them to do. Even with all that said, I am still showing value on the Texans in this game. My model, the two models I have are actually kind of split here. One model has the Browns favorite, other one has the Texans, and it's by similar amounts. So when you blend the two models together, which has been the best model for me is the blended model as far as mean squared error throughout this year goes, it has this game as a pick 'em, and I don't think that's wrong. The Texans, if you look at them, we're talking about the Browns splits with Flacco, but the Texans with Stroud have been more efficient than what the Browns have been with Flacco through the air. Defense is tougher to predict than offense, and the Browns defense has dipped a bit when they've been on the road overall this year, but against lesser foes like Denver, teams like that have gotten them when they've been on the road. The Texans may get some of their pass catchers back this week. Noah Brown, Robert Woods, both out this past week. So I think a lot of things point to these two teams being closer than the spread indicates when you factor in the fact that the Texans are at home. I am very okay taking the Texans in this game as a result. What I want to do with this bet is layer it with the spread and the money line, giving myself upside in case the Texans win this game outright, but also still getting a profit should they cover. So what I would take is your typical bet size, split that up so that you would profit if they cover the 2.5, and then put some on the money line at plus 124 as well. Again, giving yourself upside should the Texans win, but still some flexibility if they cover. The plus 2.5 in FanDuel Sportsbook is minus 104. The money line plus 124 for the Texans. Again, blended model uses this as a toss-up, so I will be willing to take the Texans and the points here, layer that with their money line, because I think that CJ Stroud is that dude. And even against a very tough defense, I want to see what he can do in this game. So give me the Texans against the Browns in the opener. As far as the total goes, I do show some value in the under. My model has this at 41.1. It's at 43.5 right now, shaded towards the over at minus 115. Now, because 44 is a key number, I'm going to wait this one out. I want to see if we can get this to 44.5. That gives me a win on a key number of 44, like a 24-20 type game, 27-17, somewhere in that range. I want to get that leeway before I decide to dive in. For me right now, it's more of a lean towards the under than anything. But if we do see that total go up a bit more, I could see myself buying and taking the under if it gets to 44.5, I'll say. I think that's the breaking point for me to take the under on this game. But I do like the Texans spread layered with their money line. Totally okay in my book. Second game of the weekend is the Dolphins at the Chiefs. This game is in Kansas City, and right now at FanDuel Sportsbook, Chiefs are favored by 3.5, and the total is at 44 right now. And that total has gone up despite the fact there is some pretty interesting weather in this game. 11-mile-per-hour winds, which is a downgrade for me based on my model, and of course, very low temperatures in Kansas City as well. So despite the weather, this total has been on the rise throughout Monday morning. It's tough to balance what to do with the Dolphins offense because they're very beat up, but I also think that Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert probably will be able to play in this game. They both practiced on Friday, limited capacity. I think they'll play, but it's hard to know for sure if that'll be the case. And the Dolphins weren't that bad from a down-to-down perspective against the Bills on Sunday night, even without those two guys. The defense, though, I think is a pretty legitimate concern given how many edge rushers they've lost. They're down to like their fourth and fifth edge rushers. They've got Melvin Ingram out there covering guys and routes. And I think that's enough to nullify the gains they've gotten from Jalen Ramsey being healthy for this defense. Chiefs offense has been above average this year, but not elite. They've been very good running the football. And that could be a key here because the Dolphins rush defense hasn't been as good as their pass defense this year. So I'm hoping for a pretty big Isaiah Pacheco game. Pacheco got the week off this past week, should be healthy and rested. I would expect a lot of Pacheco. So for DFS, I'll be looking Pacheco's way quite a bit. Overall, my model does show value in the Dolphins here because it's the plus 3.5. But unlike with the Texans, I don't agree with the model on this one. It is nice to get a win on 3, which you do with the plus 3.5, but my concerns around the Dolphins offense run pretty deep. One model views this game pretty close. So even if I think if I were just taking everything my model said was a value, I would be on the Dolphins here, but I'm not doing that. It's a stay away from me. So very okay. Not buying into the Dolphins, despite the fact my model shows value in them for this game. I'm also viewing the total as a stay away here. I have the total at 42.4. So I was right on market when it was at 42.5. It's now 44. If we were to see that total increase to 44.5, then I might be able to take the under. That'd be 2 points of value for me getting a win on 44. So I would keep an eye on that total. If it does continue to rise and get up above, to 44.5 or so, that might be a spot to take an under. But for right now, with it 44, minus 110 both ways, I am okay staying away from this game entirely and just letting it ride unless we get some movement in favor of Kansas City to make the Dolphins a bit more palatable, or we get some more movement with that total rising even a bit more. The first game of Sunday is definitely the one where the market has been most volatile throughout this morning. That is the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Buffalo Bills. Right now at FanDuel Sportsbook, Bills are 10-point favorites. Total in this game is 35.5. And the reason this game has been all over the place is because there is some pretty wild weather in store for Buffalo, at least as of right now, for Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern. They have 20-mile-per-hour winds projected at Weather Underground, and there is some potential snow in the forecast. Buffalo can get lake effect snow, so if there is snow, it could be pretty dramatic too. So this total was, I believe, 44 last night. It was 38.5 this morning. It is now down to 35.5, shaded towards the under, because the under is minus 115 at FanDuel Sportsbook. So people have gotten all over that win narrative, and I think it's gone a bit too far. And we'll talk about that more in a bit in a second. Let's talk about this overall game first before discussing just the weather. The Steelers are also another team that's pretty tough to balance because they've gotten a boost from Mason Rudolph, but I'm okay being a bit skeptical about how sustainable that is. So I've got them projected pretty similar to what I'd have if it were Kenny Pickett. Like, I'm not sure how big of a difference it is between Pickett and Rudolph when we look like projecting forward. So that's why I'm okay keeping things pretty status quo on the Steelers offense. And then we downgrade the defense with no TJ Watt. And once I do make that downgrade to the defense, I've got the spread at 10.4, which is right in line with the market again. It's at 10 right now, was 10.5 earlier. So I'm in line with the market in that. But with a large spread, coupled with the Steelers' improvements on offense and TJ Watt's injury, I actually do like the over quite a bit. Now, that's even with the weather accounted for, because again, my model accounts for wind. It penalizes teams pretty heavily for wind, but I still got this total at 43.2. Now, that's with the wind speeds projected at 20 miles per hour. Let's pretend for a second wind speeds were 5 miles per hour. If I make the wind speeds 5 miles per hour, I've got the total in this game at 45.8. So that's down 2.6 points based on a 15 mile per hour difference in wind. So I'm definitely accounting for weather already in this game, and I still can't get anywhere near 35.5. And again, it's been coming down throughout the day. Josh Allen is a chaotic quarterback, which can lead to points for either team in a hurry, and both teams have been efficient running the football. So even if we do see a pretty ground and pound kind of game, I think they could still move the ball, and I don't know that necessarily leads towards an under as much as it may typically do when teams are more run heavy, because it does keep the clock running and stuff like that. So I kind of thought we were at the bottom point, the nadir of this total when it was at 37.5. I was wrong on that because it's gone down against at 35.5 now, minus 115 on the under. If you want to hold out and kind of see if this total continues to crash, go for it. I think that's totally okay and justifiable. But I think the over will be the play at some point. Over 35.5, minus 105 right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. As far as totals go for this week, I do show some value in a couple other ones. This is the one I feel best about, is taking the over on this game. I think this movement has gone way too far. So we'll go over 35.5 at minus 105 for Steelers and Bills. Again, if you want to hold out, if you can get a 34.5, 35 is not a key number, but like 34 is. So maybe if you want to hold out, sure, go ahead. But at some point, I would look to take the over in this game for the Steelers and the Bills. Second game on Sunday is the Packers at the Cowboys right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. The Cowboys are favored by 7.5, and the total is 49.5. And this Cowboys offense has been awesome at home so far this year, like fireballs at home. They get that here because they're at home, and they get to face a pretty poor defense. So the total is high at 49.5, but I'm actually right in line with that in my model. And I've had a lot of unders on big games recently. The Cowboys, Lions, the Texans, Colts, and then Bills, Dolphins last night. I've had a lot of unders on primetime big games, but here it's a stay away. I've got this at 49.53. So right in line with market, you can actually just enjoy this game and not root against points for once. So a deviation for me, but a deviation I'm very okay with. I do want to take the points with the Packers, though. This is very much a pro-Packers take and not an anti-Cowboys take. The Cowboys are a very good football team, and I like them a lot. My model likes them a lot. But Jordan Love finished this year with 0.2 passing at net expected points per dropback. Again, 0.07 is average. CJ Stroud was about 0.16, and I adore CJ Stroud. And that number for Love is only a smidge below Dak Prescott in this exact same game. I think we should start talking about Jordan Love in a much more positive light than we already do. And that's even with the pass catchers being banged up all year long. Jordan Love in week 18 did not have Christian Watson, did not have Romeo Doubs for most of that game, and he still shredded a Bears defense that was playing like a top 10 defense across the second half of the year. So when you put Jordan Love's metrics into my blended model, I've got the Cowboys favored by 5.6 in this game. But in taking the 7.5, I get a win on a 7-point game. And of course, also, should the Packers win this one, even though the Cowboys have been involved in a ton of blowouts so far this year, that's pretty hard to pass up. I don't mind if you want to put something on the money line here, similar to other spots, and I do show value there, but it's not as big of a value as what I have on the Texans money line or another money line we'll talk about later on. So I'm okay going with just the points here, taking the 7.5. It's minus 118. Packers plus 7.5, a bet for me in the wild card round. I'm excited to watch them. I'm excited to root for them. They're an objectively very fun team, and they have a very bright future, but I also think they're good right now as well, and I think they deserve more respect than what they've gotten so far. So we'll add the Packers plus 7.5 at minus 118 at FanDuel Sportsbook in this game. As far as the total goes, already talked about that. Again, stay away from me, but I will take the Packers plus 7.5 in this game. Let's talk now about what could be the headliner for wildcard weekend. That is the Rams at the Lions. Of course, a Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, Brad Holmes revenge game here. Josh Reynolds revenge game, if you want to toss that in too. It's the revengiest revenge game of all time, and I'm very excited to watch this game. It is now the Lions minus 3.5. That was minus 3 earlier on today. I think that movement is correct. I didn't have a strong lean towards the Lions, honestly. No Sam Laporta in this game likely for the Lions. That does downgrade them. I've got them favored by 3.7, so the 3.5 I think makes a lot of sense. But either way, it says to me the spread is a stay away here. I think it's pretty efficient. Don't really want to root against either team in this game, so I'm okay staying away there. As far as the total, I do show value in the under. It's not in the value where I am leaping to take it right now. I've got this game at 48.8 in my model, which is a very big number when you consider that this game doesn't have a huge spread. But that's also 2.8 points below the market. 51 is a key number, so I think you could justify the under. Personally, I'd rather wait to see if we can get a 52, which I think we could get in this game, just based on how fun this one is. We could see a lot of talk around this game and, people talking about how offensive friendly this game could be. Both these teams have played towards the over so far this year in general, so I would not be shocked if this total does go up. So similar to Texans versus Browns, I want to take a wait and see approach in the total. If it goes up, I will likely snag the under. But at 51.5, I'm okay staying away and just enjoying a very fun game. Should be a banger. If the spread were to tighten a bit, which it doesn't look like it will, then maybe I'd wind up on the Lions. But for now, it's a stay away from me. Sit back and enjoy the game. If it were to go up, I would be willing to take the under. But for right now, it's just a very fun game. Rams, Lions, it's one of those games where when you run the model, you're kind of hoping you don't show value so you can just sit back and enjoy the game. And I do show value in the under, but we'll just kind of watch it for now and see where the market moves. Final game of this week is a very interesting / confusing game. That is the Eagles taking on the Bucks right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. Eagles favored by 2.5. Total in this game is 44. 8-mile-per-hour winds in this game, so not as big of a weather concern as we have for either the Bills game or the Chiefs game. I do not know how to handle the Eagles because Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown are both banged up. I'm not sure what their status looks like for this game. I think there's a chance both guys play. And now Jalen Hurts has a finger injury. That is all less than ideal. So what I'm going to do is keep the Eagles the status quo because my model has been lower than the market on the Eagles all year long. At times, earlier this year was to my detriment. It's been much better recently in doing that. So I figured if I keep them status quo despite their injuries and I show value in the Eagles, I can just back off and say, okay, let's see how the injuries play out this week and potentially bet them later on. But when I run them status quo, I see value on the opposing side in the Buccaneers. And that to me is a signal that I can buy into what the model is saying, knowing there is some room for downward mobility on the Eagles. And that is the case here. So I show value on the Bucks, and I want to take the same thing here as with the Texans, taking the 2.5, pairing that with their money line in order to get upward mobility should the Bucks win this game outright. As we've discussed, I've got two models, one of which is very heavy on passing efficiency, which I think is the better model. It's the model that backtests better. The other one, though, I think is a good one to look at for the Buccaneers because it penalizes them for how dependent they are on late down magic. It's been a problem for them all year long where they've kind of said, okay, first and second down, run the football, despite the fact we have a terrible rushing offense and we'll see what happens. Terrible approach. Don't think they should do that. And this model penalizes them for that. But that model, which should view the Bucks in a very negative light, still has the Bucks favored outright in this game. And the other model is right in line with that as well. And again, that's even without adjusting the Eagles down a ton for their injuries. I don't really want to have money riding on Baker Mayfield in a spot like this because there's always a risk that he reverts back to bad Baker, banged up with both a rib and it looked like an ankle injury on Sunday. But I do think the market is too high on the Eagles here. And I think the Bucks have been pretty good to us this year. So I see enough here to justify going back at least one more time, backing the Buccaneers in this game. So similar to the Texans, this is one where I want to split my units. I would put enough on the spread to profit in case the Buccaneers cover the 2.5 and then put the rest in the money line to give myself more upside should they win this game outright. I think that's the proper way to play things here. And I do agree with the model and thinking that the Bucks are the right side here. So Buccaneers plus 2.5 is minus 105 right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. Their money line is plus 126. We'll pair those together and get action on the Bucks in this game. Totals to stay away from me. Pretty efficient market. I've got this at 43.6. Market is 44. So no action there for me. So the actual spots where I show value for this week, and I'm willing to agree with what the model is saying. I'll take the Texans plus 2.5 minus 1 or plus 2.5 to cover that game and then pair that with the money line at plus 124 in their matchup with the Cleveland Browns. Layering those together where we profit if they cover and get more upside should they win the game outright. Taking the over for Steelers and Bills, over 35.5 minus 105 right now. If you want to hold off and see if you get a better number, if people keep on pushing that total down because of the weather, go ahead. Totally makes sense. And then Packers plus 7.5 at minus 118 at FanDuel Sportsbook in the game of the Cowboys. And then Buccaneers plus 2.5 at minus 105 paired with their money line at plus 126. Again, given the uncertainty around the Eagles, the fact that I'm keeping them pretty status quo and still showing value, we'll go that way. So those are the 4 spots where I'm showing value, and I agree with the model for this week. Keep an eye on the total for Texans-Browns. If it goes up a bit more, take the under. Keep an eye on the total for Lions and Rams. If you want to take the under, should it go up a bit more? I probably will personally, but I don't want to, force you to have less fun. But those are the 2 spots where we could see some value later on this week. We're going to go back through last week's recommendations here on the show tomorrow. I want to get the national championship game stuff in there as well. So if you want to hear a recap of this past week, tune in then. 4-0 week from me, which is a good way to finish off the regular season. Full recap coming up tomorrow. You can find that on the Covering the Spread podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts, FanDuel TV Plus, and the FanDuel YouTube page as well. As we'll talk to Ryan Williams to get his read on the futures market entering the NFL playoffs. If you've got questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sonis. You can find me on Threads at Jim.Sonis, and you can find FanDuel Research on Twitter at FanDuel Research. Want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your bets across the national championship game. Enjoy. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow to get in some futures discussion before the playoffs. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.